Shalom, shalom, my brothers and sisters. Shalom. This is an end time alert number 20. And we're still talking about Yashar'al's Great Migration. This is part 7 of Yashar'al's Great Migration. Our brothers and sisters, I realize some of you might think that this brother's just ranting and raving, but there are details and processes that are taking place as individuals are guided by the Spirit of Yahusha. And many of you might wonder, why do I say the Spirit of Yahusha? It is consistent with the way the Father wants it to be. For no one can come unto the Father except by acknowledging His plan, His role, His actions, and the actions that brought about the death and resurrection of the Messiah, Yahusha. As it is stated in Scriptures, if He be lifted up, He'll draw all men. Not us, He will. And He may use us, as I stated in many of my presentations. He will use us, open the mouth of a donkey, or cause the stones to cry out. But there are some more things to consider in this process of Yashar'al's migration. There are many of us who are grabbing optimism or looking for scriptures that talk about hope. But the reality is the evidence that we see. There's much evidence that indicates we are indeed in the last days. It's in the scripture, much about what the Father will do. There's in the scriptures an example of His wrath, His chastening, His blessings. While each of us listening to this have limited understanding, that doesn't mean that the Spirit of Yahusha ceases to function, ceases to do what He said He would do. So in our limited understanding, then we know that there are a vast number of possibilities that arise. When we acknowledge that we don't understand it all, we're not sure what's going on, then that means there's a lot of possibilities. A lot of possibilities out there. Possibilities that are righteous, that do line up with the scriptures. Scriptures that we may not know anything about. So how or where do we find safety? How do we find safety in the midst of all these different teachings and messages and doctrine? How do we find safety in knowing which direction to go, what actions to choose, what decisions to make? What do we know? And what have we accepted? Well, one, let me go back to the other question. How or where do we find safety? We find safety, my brothers and sisters, by establishing a heart to worship and obey the Most High more than anything, more than life as we know it. That's where we find safety. Establish a heart to worship and obey Him. Him, the Father Yahuah, the most righteous, in the name of Yahusha. And I say in the name of Yahusha, in acknowledging the way to the Father is through the Messiah. We must realize that Yahusha is whom we should be lifting up right now. And in that we will see Him drawing men and hopefully including us closer and closer to Him. So what do we know right now? What have we accepted? Let's look at some things. The economy is getting worse. Do you agree or disagree? Do you see that more and more people are becoming unemployed? Unemployment is high. Yes, the media may play games, ups and downs, and can make comparisons in numbers. But the bottom line is the economy is spiraling out of control. Greed, sin, and unrighteousness, not just in the United States, but globally. It will reach its thresholds. The storms will get worse. These are man-made storms as a result of negligence and greed and manipulation of mankind. We know that foreclosures and evictions are running rampant. I would venture to say that anyone listening to this knows someone, or either knows someone that knows someone personally that has had their home foreclosed on them or been evicted out of their apartment. What else do we know? We know that 2012 is a record-breaking drought. A record-breaking drought. That means it hasn't been much water watering the crops, watering the foods that we eat. Hasn't been much water. So we can all agree there is a record-breaking drought going on, not just in the United States, but globally. Prices will go up. But how many of us are given thought to realize that the low inventories will result? In other words, there would be low levels of food, in some cases empty shelves in the grocery stores. What else do we know? Some might say, well, Symmanayah, you're saying empty shelves, they're going to import it. Where? Where can they import enough food to satisfy the drought-stricken areas across the globe? Do not have a false sense of hope or a false sense of security. Know that this is real, my brothers and sisters. This is real. Soon, we shall see in the coming months where desperation for survival will increase amongst the very poor. And we will begin to see many of us who think we are rich or wealthy or okay and saying, I'll pay high prices, but if it's no food, we will begin to see the frustration of man. Man will begin to become frustrated, mankind, if we find ourselves running out of food, running out of water. Depending on where you live, some are beginning to feel the pinch. Some are beginning to receive warnings about don't water the grass, don't water your cars, take minimum showers. Eventually it's going to get down to water rations in some parts of the world that it hasn't already been established. We will begin to see the wrath of Yahuah intensify, my brothers and sisters. He will not retreat, nor will he tarry, nor will we be able to cause his wrath to stall. If you study scripture, we'll see that in times past, Yahuah has used famine, which is food shortages, and water shortages, in demonstrating his wrath. Why? Look around, my brothers and sisters. Look around. Can we honestly say that the world is getting better, or are we spiraling out of control as a rebellious group of individuals? The world has become more sinful, more blatant, and more rebellious. The scriptures tell us of coming things pertaining to prophecy and its fulfillment. These things will come to pass. They will, and I can't repeat them enough, my brothers and sisters. There are all kinds of details regarding all of the aforementioned matters, everything that I'm talking about right now. And yes, I know, and I'm going to say this again, I know that there are so many messages, so many out there with an opinion. Someone may just be right. That's right, someone may just be right. How do we know? Have we established a heart to worship and obey the Most High? Have we established that? Looking in the mirror and establish that for ourselves? For the Spirit of Yahusha will guide us if we are able to identify his voice. And how do we identify the voice of the Spirit of Yahusha? It begins again, and I say this again, with having a pure heart to worship and obey him. Let us consider this, my family. No matter who you trust or believe, one of the things that will occur in the coming months, we will begin to see the strain of the issue of food and water amongst someone that we know. And by the next 6 to 8 months, if not sooner, within the next 6 to 8 months, if not sooner, we will begin to see crime spike in enormous proportions as people become more and more desperate as a result of not having food or water. People will become more and more frustrated as they discover the truth, my brothers and sisters. For even in the midst of chaos, the Father is revealing himself, his righteousness, his truth. And some people are angry knowing that we have been lied to for many years. Many are angry, irate. Many, as a result of coming into the truth, are so angry that they just want to take matters into their own hands. We cannot do that, my brothers and sisters. This is what will happen. Chaos will intensify. Catastrophes will enlarge, my brothers and sisters, and it will draw you to those you trust. Some will call other family members and draw and may gather all at one house. Some will run to their assembly places or their camps. Some will move and run to a designated area in case of emergency. What will begin to happen is little cliques, from small to large, groups will begin to form. And they'll begin to argue and struggle on trying to determine how order will be established. Civil unrest will be like we have never seen it before since the existence of mankind. But know this, my brothers and sisters, know this. The Father is not void of what is happening. The Father has not turned his back. He is in all, for all that seek to worship and obey him. And yes, his word will be fulfilled. The fruit of our rebellion will come, and he will chasten, and his wrath will execute right judgment. But for those of us who seek to worship and obey him, we will find comfort. The comfort would be in understanding what's going on. It's not going to always be a comfort of a pat on the back, or a warm fuzzy, or a house with lights, or a buffet meal. The comfort will be in understanding all that we are about to go through, my brothers and sisters. And I can't stress this enough. I will continue to say, prepare your minds, prepare your bodies, have a ready mind to worship, to obey, to identify the voice of the Spirit of Yahusha, no matter whom he's speaking through. Study earnestly the whole entire scriptures from Genesis to Revelation, and understand as much as you can while we can. Because trust me, because we may be slothful in our studying, may be slothful in our praying, this is not going to cause the movement of the Spirit of Yahusha. This is not going to stop the execution of his prophecies, the fulfillment of his prophecies. So no matter what condition we're in, the process moves forward. And I believe it's going to come to a point wherever you set up a stronghold or a camp and think that you're protected, at some point, each of us will be shaken. We will be moved out of our homes, of our apartments or trailers, or even if we're living in a car somewhere in some park. Eventually, we will be compelled to move. And to the believer, I say to you, Yashar'al, I believe the Father is saying, begin to think about migrating to Virginia for those that are in the United States. And I've said, for those who are listening across the world, begin to think about migrating to the uttermost part of your country that moves and points towards the homeland. It's not going to be the geographic boundaries that we think exist, but I believe that Yashar'al will be gathered from the four corners of the earth, and we will be gathered to a place that the Father has designated for us, for those who have been determined by the Father, for those who will be obedient to his Spirit. And for those who cannot hear this, there are going to be some that won't respond when the time comes. All I can say to any of you, don't take my word for it. Pray. For if my words are true, the Father will have them to work and burn within your spirit. And you will begin to ask questions on how do I prepare to make this transition. And if it's in the United States to Virginia, how do I begin to prepare? What do I think? How would I know? Let me say this, brothers and sisters. You'll know. To those of you who are meant and designated to be there, you'll know when the time comes. And I would say this is the time to start looking at your maps. Look at what options you have to reach that place. Think about the timing it would take for you to get to wherever you are, to Virginia, if you're in the United States. Do I know when? No. Do I know where in Virginia? I don't know. But I would say to those in the United States, at least pray on these matters. The great migration of Yashar'al, the preparation and processes continue. Right now, prepare your mind. Do you really know if your brother or sister is not going to make a decision to be prepared to migrate and just not telling you? Think for yourself, make a decision for yourself, and pray on these matters, my brothers and sisters. Pray on these matters strongly and earnestly. Shalom. 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 This has been an end time alert. Yashar'al's migration. The process continues.